Thank you, Mukta Institute of Political Science and Economy and the Festival on Public Policy. It's a great occasion to talk about issues that we are all concerned with. Today, what I wanted to speak yesterday, I want to talk about it today. That is, how can Maharashtra uh, lead India to the aim of becoming Viksit Bharat? How Maharashtra can become the engine for that. So, while we all applaud ourselves about a lot of good things that happen in Maharashtra, but the statistics are not all that good. So, let's have a look at that. So, my presentation generally go around what's our journey to 1 trillion economy, some of the recommendations which the uh, Economic Advisory Committee has given, but also look at things that are practical that we can do. Because the Economic Advisory Committee report has told in a normative way what we should be doing, but we already know we should be doing that. The issue is, why don't we do it? What are the constraints? So I'll look at some of the constraints and see how, what are the political challenges of handling them. So the first thing is that, of course, Maharashtra is the closest to becoming 1 trillion compared to all our peer states. This number now is much closer to around 400. So we are almost just short of half a trillion. So if you see our growth has consistently been declining, but more important, it has been below the national average. So that's not so good. Then the state GDP share in the national GDP has also been declining, which means other states are moving much faster. So if we want to really reach this 1 trillion, business as usual by 2028 won't take us there. So we would be somewhere hardly 0.6 trillion. So how do we step it up to these types of humongous growth rates? Even this 7%, we have been up and down. It has been fluctuating, and 17% is what we need, which is quite an ask. So I'll look first at the investment scenario. It's quite interesting to see how the investment situation in Maharashtra, which is one of the richest states, moves. So the first is that our capital formation has been declining over time. Now, can anybody who looks at Maharashtra's finances or who's interested in Maharashtra economy tell that why is Maharashtra's capital formation on the decline? It's not true with states in our neighborhood. Yeah.
So the debt is at a very staggering rate of 7.7%, which is the highest in the country right now. But this debt is very unique because this debt is not due to something previous government's debts, but this is the debt due to infrastructure investment that the government is doing. Infrastructure investment has a long gestation period. So that is why we are not getting that.
So I'm
debt.
sorry, but on both you're wrong. We are amongst the lowest indebted states in the country.
Yes, we are not on the debt, but
No. And secondly, we have low capital formation, not because of borrowing. We have huge space. I'll show you in the next slide. We are one of the few states which is very much inside what we call the FRBM limit, which is like 3% of the GDP is the rational amount which a state can borrow, and we are very much inside that. So we borrow very less. That's the main reason why we invest less. That's one of the reasons. But there's another thing. So this is the other thing that you got partly right, but that doesn't directly affect that question. Do you all understand ICOR, that is incremental capital output ratio? So incremental capital output ratio is actually going up for Maharashtra hugely, and that reason is for the long gestation, but it's also because of inefficiency and stalled government projects. A lot of us whom we feel are good people also create a lot of hurdles in implementing most of the projects. So any metro project which faces, let's say, 100 petitions in the court and delays it by 3 years, it shoots up the ICOR because the money is already spent, but the output is not there. So one of the key underlying factors behind the high ICOR for mega projects is definitely public interest litigations, which are mostly misguided in the sense that finally the project does get through, but it only delays it by 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. But that's not the only reason. So at this, I'm just provoking the audience a bit on, on this issue. There are other more powerful reasons. What this means is that if in 2012, by investing 2 rupees 43 paise, we could get 1 rupee of state GDP, we have to invest twice that much, 4 rupees 61, to get the same one additional unit. The main culprit in this is, any guesses? There is one sector which is the main culprit. Doesn't affect any of us here though. No. They're small right now. They could have been before, but irrigation. Maharashtra has incomplete irrigation projects of more than 140,000 crores. Some of them were started in 60s, some in 70s. The cost at that time for a project like Ghoshi Khurd was maybe around 200 crores. It's already exceeded 12,000 crores. And still its full realization has not been reached. So this is one of the reasons. This just shows how much additional investment we need to reach the high growth rate of up to 17%. If you want to really reach it by 28, and that means that today our GSDP to investment ratio is around 26%. That is Maharashtra as a whole, not government. Maharashtra as a whole, private plus public, invests up to 26% of our GSDP in capital formation. But we need to go up to 36%. And that requires an investment of something like 15 trillion. So, first look is, we look at public policy on our fiscal issues. So, how do we ensure that we are better off in terms of whatever money we have, and how can we optimize on that, on the government side? Then we'll talk on the private side. So, this answers your question that Maharashtra's fiscal deficit is amongst the lowest. It's lower than the average. But more important, it is less than what is allowed. That is, our borrowing is much less. That brown line. So, this is where we could be if we were to borrow as much as we can. But we are very much below that. So that's not so good in the sense that this is not good only when we compare it to our low capital formation. The second thing is that this, you are saying debt GSDP ratio. So you can see states like Kerala, Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh, Punjab, Telangana, all of them are much higher than us. So we are not that bad at all. But then we are bad at some place here. So this is the actual answer in tautological terms, in statistical terms, or in accounting terms. This is the answer for low investment. So we invest low because our committed spending is very high. This is Maharashtra, 41%. So 41% of the total amount is against salaries, interest, and committed grants. So here I want to ask you, which is the most unproductive grant, which is very specific to Maharashtra, which no other state does, and which is why we constrain our capital formation. By the way, we are all products of that in Maharashtra. Yes? No, that is true for everyone, all the states. I said what is typical for Maharashtra. You got it partly right, but it's the very opposite of what you said. Yeah. Everything. Bombay in the sense of Bombay administered by Maharashtra. There is parts of Bombay which are not administered by us, like Bombay Port Trust and all railways. That's different. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's national. We don't give that. Okay. So the main reason for this is salary grants to private schools, which no other state gives, and that is 80,000 crores. 80,000 crores. Even 10% of that we don't spend on completing irrigation projects. And these are private schools. We have a private school, we pay at the same rate them as we pay to the government school. The government schools are not closed because private schools are there. This is typical. This is the only thing which is very specific to Maharashtra. Okay, let me just rush through some of the things. I won't go into all of this. Yeah, this is the thing I wanted to show you, that we have a very low capital formation this against the GSDP compared to the national average. And though we have committed revenue expenditure is also less. So this is one area where we can improve, but our capital outlay itself doesn't always lead to good outcomes. So some of the things that we are thinking of, this is on the Chinese model in Mitra, is that we can't tax people more. What is the maximum taxation under GST, and we have almost reached that. So what we would like to do is to monetize land. The maximum investment that is taking place in India now, in Maharashtra now, is land monetized investment. You know this metro which is being built today, or the metro built in Mumbai, or the new pool which Prime Minister inaugurated. That's all been made not on your tax revenue. Technically, you have not paid for it, unlike everything else. That's been paid by selling land, Mumbai land, to other builders and raising money, which is also the China model. For 40 years, China grew at 10% only simply by monetizing the public lands. That's the only resource the country had when it was not connected to the outside world. We are very afraid of monetizing land. So this is one issue that we need to take up. Let me just cover one more issue. Then, I'll just talk about jobs, because that's an area which affects all of us. I won't get into what we can do. This is the thing that I wanted to do, which is that what we are doing in Mitra is we are trying to finish most of the irrigation projects in 1 year now by bulk investment, including through additional borrowing. So that the projects where they don't have any land, additional requirement, those can be completed quickly, which will also reduce the ICOR. So this is our first task. We have got an approval for this, and roughly around 15,000 crores we are borrowing against it. This is the second issue, that we create assets which don't yield. For example, the total irrigation potential created is 55 lakhs, but we use only 42 lakhs. And the problem is that canals are not good. This doesn't again require that much investment. So this is the second big area Mitra has taken up to take it. I'll just go on to the job sector and then I'll conclude my talk. Yeah. So this is an area which affects all of us. This is my last issue which I like to take up, which is jobs. So again, do you think skilling or more education helps to create more jobs, other than jobs for teachers, whom we already know are overpaid and form a very big bulk of our non-plan expenditure? This graph tells you the main reason why we don't have jobs. So agriculture contributes in Maharashtra and also in India 11% to our GDP, but it keeps 50% of our workforce, which means that a person working in agriculture compared to industry earns 1/7. Why should a person stay in agriculture if just by migrating to a nearby industry or any services, including thelawala on the streets, gets 10 times more income? Why does he stay stuck to his land? It's because all of us, in their interest, made rules and regulations which tie them and also restrict their movement here. So, this is what I said, that skilling doesn't really help. It doesn't create jobs. For example, from this graph, you can see that there is surplus requirement only of unskilled people. But for the areas where we have a little bit of extra demand, in areas like BFSI, etc., that can't take care of the annual increment in our labor force. So basically, we need to create more jobs. Of course, it will help to finish this small gap of the skilled labor, but that won't absorb the entire increment of the labor force. So Bangladesh has a employment elasticity of 0.5 or 0.45. That is, every 1% growth in Bangladesh, or let's say if their output increased by 100, they can create 45 more jobs. India, if we increase our manufacturing output by 100, we create only one new job because our employment elasticity is very less. My last question, any guesses on that reason? Why are we so bad compared to our neighbor? Lot of us who do our business, my last point. Lot of us who work here through this institute and others are partly responsible for this and not being able to see through it. I told you skill development doesn't matter. Only labor laws. What we think is in the interest of workers have completely killed fresh formal employment in India. And what we did in Maharashtra shows the way out. So this jobless growth is because of that. This is what we did in Maharashtra in the last 5 years under Mr. Fadnavis. We improved the Contract Labor Act. We completely did away with the Factory Act for smaller factories. And this is these are the exemptions that we provided. 14,000 MSMEs were exempted, and third-party certification for boilers, not just by the government. And this is the result that we got, which is that 30% of all the jobs created in that 5 years were created in Maharashtra across all India. So I'll end my talk out here by saying two big things. Nothing which is conventional and seems good is right. Dismantling labor laws, even drastically, will help to create more jobs for more poorer people and give much more welfare than the so-called laws give to the small amount of organized sector. Similarly, borrowing more to invest more will not create a problem for our state. It will only create more investment and more growth. Thank you.